Call the emergency meeting of the School Board of Charlotte County, Florida, June 29th, 2011 to order. If you could please stand and join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To give a little overview of what's going to happen here today, we are in section 447 of Florida statute .403, and it has to do with resolution of impasses in the labor organization section of Florida statutes. And what it calls for is the legislative body to conduct a public hearing at which the parties shall be required to explain their positions with respect to rejected recommendations, and afterwards the legislative body shall take such actions as it deems to be in the public interest, including the interest of the public employees involved, to resolve the disputed impasse issues. So what's going to happen is we're going to, when we get down to the impasse section, each of the two sides will have 15 minutes to present their positions. Then we'll give each side kind of 5 minutes if they feel the need to have a rebuttal. Then we'll have board discussion, and then there will be board action. Everyone has in front of them, I believe, a copy of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections that anyone feels the need to? Okay, then we'll just move forward. The first item is new business, and the first item of new business is that the board needs to establish findings for an emergency meeting for purposes of this impasse hearing. And I just want to read into the record that this is an emergency meeting of the Charlotte County School Board. It's conducted under the provisions of section 120.525(3) Florida statutes. In convening this meeting, the board must find that there is immediate danger to the public health, safety, or welfare requiring immediate action. The board has conducted negotiations with the Charlotte, Florida Education Association, CFEA bargaining unit up until yesterday, June 28, 2011, in order to make the utmost good-faith effort by the superintendent and CFEA to resolve the remaining contract issues through bargaining. While those negotiations have been largely successful, the remaining issues must be resolved via the impasse process in order to enable the Charlotte County School District to timely provide payroll services to its employees. The CFEA has been an essential bargaining partner throughout this difficult process and has entered into an impasse stipulation agreement with the superintendent as to all procedural aspects of the conduct and scheduling of the impasse hearing today. And I have a copy of that signed up here. Do you all have copies of it signed? Okay. The school board has also posted notice of this hearing on its website and has alerted the media of the date and time of these proceedings. And I have verification here from our communications officer that that was sent out this morning at 9:21 a.m. Since the resolution of this matter is essential to the timely issuance of paychecks to school board employees, and the school board has provided notice reasonable under the circumstances to the public via the board website and the media by personal email, the board needs to conclude that the reasons for conducting this impasse hearing are on an emergency basis and are sufficient to meet those requirements, and that the procedure used for notice and conduct of the hearing is fair under these circumstances. So, what I need from someone on the board is a motion to find valid reasons for emergency meeting for purposes of an impasse hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the board finds the emergency meeting requirements met for purposes of this impasse hearing today. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. The next item on the new business agenda, number 2, is the board waiver of impasse process to proceed directly to imposition. If you look on the impasse stipulation that is signed by both parties under item number 4, the two parties, who are the superintendent and the CFEA, have waived any additional, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Number 3, thank you. Okay, yes, thank you. The stipulation that has been signed waives the impasse proceedings with regard to the special magistrate and any other steps that are presented in the law. The CFEA has waived them and the superintendent have waived them via signing this document, but the board has not yet waived them. So at this point, I need a motion from the board to waive the impasse process and proceed directly to imposition.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the board waive the impasse process and proceed directly to imposition. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, we shall move forward. The next item is the impasse hearing itself. There are two issues of dispute for review. In the stipulation document, they are listed as items 10 and 11. The first item to be resolved is the experience credit within the meaning of existing collective bargaining agreements shall not be awarded. Both parties agree at this point that no performance evaluation process to connect any employee competency to compensation has been completed. So there's actually, both sides agree, even though that was a piece that had gone out for ratification. Question?
Madam Chairman, we had a motion and a second, but we did not vote.
Oh, we didn't vote?
Yeah.
No.
Gosh, I'm sorry. I thought we did. I appreciate that. So then we need to vote on the board waiver of the impasse process. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I appreciate that very much, especially in a meeting like this. Okay, so the two issues for dispute are the experience credit, which actually is not the bone of contention, but because it was on the ratification document, it needs to be addressed here. The second item is the issue of holidays versus furlough days, and that's the issue that we're going to be giving each side the opportunity to speak for 10 minutes to address. So are there any questions before we move forward?
I thought it said, I didn't think it was 10 minutes, I thought it was 15.
Yeah, it says
15
Number
minutes,
seven.
number 7. Did I not say
You
15?
said 10.
Oh, I put the timer on 15. I apologize. Thank you. Yep, it's 15. Mr. Attorney, is there anything that we need to review before we move forward?
Doing just fine, thank you.
Okay, great. Then, according to the agreement, CFEA will be presenting first. And Mrs. Rendell has her timer up here for 15 minutes. And if you get close, we'll kind of give you a heads up.
Before you start your timer, I would like to just address the issue of experience credit. When we took this out for ratification, at that time, the language states that this process must be in place by June the 30th. We understood when it went out that why we didn't believe it would be possible because of what they've done with Race to the Top, with Senate Bill 736, but we had to leave open and bring that out because it still, I guess, was possible that something could be put in place. Despite the best efforts of all parties, that wasn't possible, and I just wanted to make that and read that into the public record. And that's why it needed to go out initially, because we couldn't make that projection of what was going to happen by June the 30th.
And for the record, that's June 30th, 2011. Thank you.
Okay? Timer. Why we're here is regarding issue of furlough days versus unpaid holidays. The BAC, as you all know, had met at a very regular basis. The decision was made that we needed to go ahead and to balance things and to make things work to meet the criteria of avoiding layoffs if possible. We needed to make some salary adjustments. And one of them would be the money brought forth by a loss of pay for employees of 3 days. That would cover every employee. At that time, when it was initially brought up, it was brought up by paid holidays. What I would like to do is to pass out some minutes of meetings.
And there should be one for Mrs. Smith as well.
If you would look on, I think I highlighted on page 3, reflects the brief discussion we had, would furloughs be better than unpaid holidays? And this was either from Renee Wiley or Chuck Briner. I'm not exactly sure who wrote this, and with the caption, and this was, I believe, the idea of people at the meeting, you can dress a pig up, but it's still a pig. We, as it turned out, I believe were wrong. While the people at that meeting felt when you 3%, whether it's from an unpaid holiday or whether it's from furlough days, in many of our members' eyes, that wasn't the same. While the dollars were the same, the action of taking a day's pay and giving up a day's work was significantly different to our members than giving up a day's pay for a paid holiday. We were unaware of that at the time. And I just wanted to mention that part. The second piece at the following meeting, which happened real quickly, at May 9th, it was May 9th, I believe.
Thank you. I need to give one to the attorney here.
On the second page, I believe, it should be in yellow to the board members. Everybody should be in yellow. There was a discussion regarding paid holidays. Doug talked with business owners about paid holidays. They give 2 to 4 a year: Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, Memorial Day. And that appeared, there was some discussion on that, and what it amounted to was the perception in the community, apparently, that we have too many paid holidays. Unfortunately for us, we did not, while we trusted, we did not verify. What we've done since, and this where this came out, so you are aware, when it was brought forth by one of our employees whose spouse works for Walmart, where they get 6 paid holidays, Walmart not necessarily being the greatest proponent of employee benefits, we then went and found that Publix, Winn-Dixie, Key Agency, Ace Hardware, all the companies we've met, and we found that the average was 7 with those. I'd like to put into exhibit, this comes from the Department of Labor. Hopefully you have it up.
John,
Yes.
we need another one of these.
The first,
Second.
And also this one.
Here,
Okay.
how about the one just before that?
You're on your own.
we got it.
You look across the top, this was in 2010. I'm following this up with another one. And once again, this is from the Department of Labor. Dealing with specifically in the private sector, the number of paid holidays. And this is for full-time employees. You'll look at the Department of Labor statistics. They also have the number of paid holidays given to part-time workers. I offer these in exhibit just to make you aware, which the BAC was not aware. We feel very comfortable that the great majority of workers throughout the country and in Charlotte County, we're in the process now of talking to banks. We're talking now to bigger businesses. We're talking to people who employ. If you look down, they break it even into numbers of employees. That the bigger the number versus the smaller the number, we're finding that even small businesses. Now, are we talking 1 or 2? No. If we have 4 employees and there's mom, dad, and I don't know how they're doing that, but we feel very clear that given the ample opportunity to provide witnesses, which we didn't have, that we can go ahead and justify that, unlike the information given to the BAC, 2 to 4 is not accurate. We prefer to use the numbers here, which we believe are everything we've gone ahead and done have shown that they have 6 to 8. The kicker was with Walmart, when Walmart has now twice as many paid holidays as Charlotte County teachers, it's an issue that our people, it just really does bother them. Part of the reason behind this is whether it's a furlough day, whether it's a paid holiday, a pig is a pig, it generates the same amount of savings. What's been brought to our attention as we've gone through these negotiations is that, well, we have a problem because With the ratification of the support staff, and even prior to that, we have certain number of support staff workers who only work when kids are in school. Our concept of a furlough day would be when kids aren't in school, whether they were preschool meetings, whether they were other kinds of meetings. We have plenty of days to go ahead and choose from. That we have some bus drivers, some paras who don't have that opportunity. It was mentioned that that's unfair and it's not equitable. While they're losing the same amount of money is equitable, and when you get into fairness, it's really difficult. For example, at the BAC, it became very clear that when our middle school and high school teachers, when we agreed to increase their workload by 20%, and we did that to no other employee in the district, while we did talk about the unfairness of that, we knew that was something that had to be done. Could we go ahead and handle this at the paid holiday for those people? Yeah, it would be equitable. It may not be fair in some people's eyes. But there's a lot of issues out there that aren't fair. I have in front of you once again the 2 versus the 4, and I've got them in Publix. Most of them Publix specifies by 6 on their web pages. I can pass these out and get them to you. If you want to refute the numbers, that's fine. We have no problem with that. But once again, I mentioned that because at BAC, when we did make the majority recommendation to go to paid holidays, it was based on 2 issues. Well, a pig's a pig, and we get so many more than other people. Our belief, we didn't do our due diligence. Things were really rushed. A pig is not a pig, and we do not get any appreciably more holidays than any other workers. When you look at the 10 months that we work, you look at the national average of 8.5 or whatever it is, you look at 7. I think part of the problem would be, and I surely hope that we don't get sucked into this, that there may be members of our work team, not teachers, who maybe do have significant number of paid holidays more. And we can't go ahead and control that. We just represent our teachers. What we're asking for is the furlough days to go ahead and, it's been mentioned that, well, our teachers work so much that they don't have enough time to get done what they want to get done. Certainly, we're talking when students are there. Our teachers are going to come in, and right now, they've been in our buildings already. They're going to be preparing on their own. This is a matter of principle for them. It's simply a matter of we've increased your workload by 20% for middle and high school. We're cutting your take-home pay. We've added to your payment for employment. Oh, and by the way, when we make those cuts, while we could go ahead and give you, at least take the day that you're supposed to work, we're not going to do that. We're going to take the paid holiday. We ask that you consider that. We ask that you consider that, are we overpaid? Do we have a rich benefit package, or is this more of a matter of convenience? Is it maybe easier to say, it's getting close to school start, and what the heck, they agreed to it, so let's just go ahead, and they meaning the BAC, which they certainly did. Let's just go ahead and we'll stay where we were, and then, maybe we can revisit it next year. I don't think that's the issue. The issue for our people is, and this is nothing against the workers at Walmart, but no, we do deserve the same benefits that they have. We deserve the same benefits as the private sector. We go ahead and we've given. And as you know, this is something that it's not, I don't even know if it's what you're giving up, $1 is $1. In this case, if the pig's the pig, we're okay. Understand it from our people, it's certainly not. That's the end of my little thing, and how much time I take?
You had 4.5 minutes left.
That's good.
Let the gentleman reserve that for rebuttal at the end. He may be
So they said I could have 5 for rebuttal.
I did say that.
She did say
Now
that.
you get 9 and
I
a half.
tried.
And we'll ask questions, and that'll be part of the board discussion at that time. Just click over there to the left. No, when you started, when she'll start. Okay. Human Resources, representing the superintendent.
Madam Chair, board members, esteemed attorney. I'm going to be limiting my remarks to the issue of the paid holidays versus furloughs because the other issue of the experience credit has already been put aside because of the stipulation. The superintendent's recommendations for budget cuts for this coming school year included a recommendation for a reduction in the number of paid holidays for all district employees. Reducing paid holidays was one of the recommendations submitted to him by the Budget Advisory Committee. First, I'd like to give some historical information about the Budget Advisory Committee and the process used to develop those recommendations for the cuts. You have before you the Budget Advisory Committee language that was ratified in the fall by the unions and by the school board. During this school year, the Budget Advisory Committee, and I will refer to them as BAC, met on a regular basis to conduct the work it was designed to do. And you have that language in front of you. This was a collaborative effort with representatives from all employee groups. The BAC defined its purpose, and you see that on the second sheet in your handout, which is the possible solution sheet. We brainstormed and came up with a purpose and with standards. And our purpose as a BAC was how can we reconcile revenue and expenditures to maintain an adequate operating budget while making recommendations that are equitable to all stakeholders while protecting jobs and maintaining student success. During the meetings throughout this school year, the committee developed scenarios for budget cuts based on budget shortfalls, and these budget cuts and possible solutions were measured against these standards. Is it fair, equitable, consistent, credible, affordable, feasible, impartial, saleable, and defendable? And you have a copy of that in front of you as well. Once the data were reviewed, consistent with the BAC process, the BAC then made recommendations to the superintendent. Although consensus was not reached, there was a majority opinion, and the recommendations were submitted to the superintendent. Minority opinions for recommendations also went to Dr. Whitaker. Now, receiving the BAC's recommendations, reviewing the work by the BAC, and then determining whether to accept or reject was the superintendent's responsibility. He made it clear that the timelines would be tight because of the legislative session's budgetary decisions, which would be determined mid-May. Also clear was that new budget cuts would need to be implemented July 1st. He was consistent in measuring each of those budget cuts or reductions against the standards set forth by the BAC. He posted his recommendations on the website, and the unions were asked to take the recommendations out to their members for ratification. On June 27th, just days before the start of the new year, I received written notification that the contract would not be ratified. In addition, the notification requested that we meet to discuss furlough days as an option. The concept of reducing work days or instituting furlough days was not on the list of recommendations from the BAC, nor was it recommended during Dr. Whitaker's conversations with senior staff or with principals or with his return meetings to the BAC as he went forward. And you can see, if you look on the possible solutions list that you have, that we do have eliminating paid holidays, but there's no mention here of furlough days. So it was something that was not seriously considered by the BAC and offered to the superintendent. Why select reductions in paid holidays rather than instituting furlough days? First, how could a reduction in work days meet those standards of fair, equitable, or consistent? True, teachers may have some non-student contact days that could be cut, but what about other staff members? How many days would they have that could possibly be cut? What about the work that was done during those days? In addition, if we have bus drivers, food service workers, whose day and their work depends on students being in school, if they were to take furlough days at some point in the year, then substitutes would have to be brought in to do their work. So does that meet the standard of fair, equitable, consistent, or cost neutral? In addition, reducing work days affects productivity and planning for instruction. How is that fair or equitable for all stakeholders? We believe teachers, as well as other employees, need every day of their contract year in order to be productive, to develop lesson plans for students, and get their assigned tasks completed. There is already a lack of time for professional development, for professional learning groups, and a loss of 3 additional work days. How can that possibly be supported? Is it consistent with the BAC's purpose of maintaining student success? The CCSPA contract was ratified by the board last night. That ratification by the support employees included a reduction in the paid holidays for all members. Will it be fair, equitable, or consistent to reduce work days for teachers while all other employees lose paid holidays? One of the overriding concerns of the BAC was that all stakeholders be treated equitably. There is no doubt or argument that employees are affected by significant budget cuts and that sacrifices are being made by all employees, by all schools, and by all departments. The question is really, how can we make those cuts and sacrifices fair, equitable, and consistent? As the superintendent worked with the BAC to weigh solutions to the budgetary shortfall, at the very core of the process were those standards of fairness, equity, and consistency, and the mission of providing equity to all stakeholders. The superintendent's recommendations for budget cuts, including the reduction in paid holidays for all employees, were certainly congruent with those core values. He worked long and hard to ensure he received feedback from multiple, diverse sources and that the cuts he recommended were fair, equitable, and consistent among all employee groups. As you consider the information you have heard from both sides this afternoon, we urge you to examine the process Dr. Whitaker used to develop his recommendations, including extensive meetings, recommendations, and feedback from the Budget Advisory Committee, a body composed of members from all employee groups. His fidelity to the purpose of the BAC for equity for all stakeholders and maintaining student success in the standards that body, the BAC, developed: fairness, equity, and consistency. The recommendation for a reduction in paid holidays was among those recommendations approved by BAC, and our hope is that you will support the superintendent's recommendation. Thank you. Did I beat his time? 6.5 minutes left.
Just resetting the timer. Okay, Mr. Klenevich.
Just 2 issues I would like to clear up. Once again, the issues of furloughs were discussed, and as I made it clear that the information that we have apparently was incorrect and based the decision on incorrect information. On June 22nd, when we released the results, it was mentioned that, well, we never discussed furlough days before. Now all of a sudden we want to. Obviously, we did discuss furlough days in the past, but more importantly than that is we're bound by statute when our contract's ratified to make an honest effort to go ahead and try to resolve the issue. Also, which wasn't mentioned, were the issues, can we look at, to get this contract ratified, can we look at maybe, well, 1 furlough day and 2 paid holidays? There are different things that are in there to try to make some effort to go ahead and continue when we have something that obviously the employees disagreed with. That's why that was brought out the 22nd. What was a little bit disheartening is the fact that none of the other options were discussed. It was pretty much, this is what it's going to be. We have to have this done by July 1st. Obviously, the issue of salary's not in there, that we didn't meet that. The issue of whether or not we're going to have the 1.5% and how it's pulled out, the 3 days. I mean, a lot of different options there. It was, once again, as we rushed through this process, but that's why that came. We have the obligation to our employees. There's an obligation to this board to try to resolve these issues. And that's why we brought forward on the 22nd at greater length, are there any possibilities? Because our intent was to get this resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melanson? Just touch it anywhere off to the left.
Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, the district is certainly interested in going back to the table for the coming year and renegotiating many of the issues. If you notice, a lot of the information that came forth last night, even from the CCSPA, referenced only the 2011-12 year. So we will certainly be going back into negotiations, and I did offer that up to Mr. Klinevich when we met earlier this week. I also would like to talk a little bit about his reference to the middle and high school teaching 6 out of 7. Granted, that's going to be a heavy load for them. But remember, the elementary teachers are already teaching the equivalent of 6 out of 7. The equity came out from finding an amount of savings at the elementary level, which came out of guidance, out of STEM, out of media, and PE. This certainly does affect the amount of time that the elementary have as well. In addition, Mr. Klinevich recommends or suggests that the superintendent's recommendation should be ignored, and also ignoring the fair, equitable, consistent standards that were so important to BAC throughout this process. Please understand that these were not just important, they are very important. And they admonished the superintendent to be sure that whatever he brought back to the BAC and whatever his final recommendations were, they needed to be fair, equitable, and consistent. I believe that if the board reverses this recommendation of the superintendent, that decision will probably not sit well with either the Budget Advisory Committee, who set those standards in place and made the recommendations, as well as the CCSPA, who supported those. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is board discussion. And this item is here prior to a motion because there may be some questions that board members may have of either Mr. Klinevich or Ms. Melanson. So at this point, I'm going to open the floor for board discussion. Mrs. Rendell.
First, I want to say that I'm really sorry we have to be here today to even discuss cutting employees' pay. Our employees, their pay will already be lessened by 3% because of the FRS contribution that has to be made. And year after year after year, we have given our employees more and more work to do. Sometimes taking something off the plate, but most of the times not. We ask them to do more and more, and yet we are here discussing how we can give them less pay rather than more pay, and that's a shame. And we all know that for years, the Florida budget crisis and the financial situation, and just this week the governor has signed more education bills into law that will cut the budget even more and making it more difficult still to balance our budgets. And many districts across the state have laid off hundreds of employees, and we agreed a couple of years ago that we were not going to do that at Charlotte County Public Schools unless we absolutely had to lay off people. That was our number one priority. Keep our employees, because they are what makes our district an A district, a high-performing district, and they are who give our students the best well-rounded education that you can get anywhere in the state. So our employees are our priority, and we care about them, and it's really sad and very upsetting that we are here having to discuss which way we're going to lower their pay. That being said, I am hung up on the fairness and equity issue. The two standards that the BAC has stated from the very beginning, how the litmus test for all the solutions. And I don't see how I've not been convinced how a furlough day is fair, and I know the argument is, oh, well, other things weren't fair. Well, that doesn't make this, I can't help that, but I can have some say in this, and I don't think furlough days are fair because, as was discussed, some employees just don't have them to give, so how can we give them to some and not others? So that's all I want to say for right now.
Discussion? Mr. Vincent?
Yeah, I was advised not to, but I do have one quick question for John. Do you know, or where do you come up with the assumption that it was the holidays that led to the members not ratifying the contract?
From the multiple emails, phone calls, threats, and members quitting tonight.
Okay, like I said, I was just curious. I just wanted to know where we'd gotten that. Much like Barbara, none of us want to be here today, and in a perfect world, we wouldn't be. The equity thing is what plays to me too. I think if we were having this discussion across the board with, the teachers union and the support staff union discussing furlough versus paid holidays, there'd be more ability to really go. You used a pig as a pig analogy, and I'm more of an apples to apples kind of person. And in my opinion, furlough days to paid holidays are not apples to apples, because I don't see how giving up 3 we call them teacher work days, but 3 non-student contact days isn't going to have an impact on the classroom. Everything that we have done with this budget was, where can we cut? Number one goal of BAC and everyone else, where can we cut without losing people? But number 2, where can we cut without losing people and not impacting the classroom? In my opinion, if we go to furlough days, we know our teachers don't have enough time as it is, and I appreciate what you said. I know as well as you do, there are teachers right now that are out working. Call it a furlough day. It's a day that they're working and not getting paid for, but I just don't see how we can give those up in good faith. Also, with what's going on with the support staff. To your information about the public sector holidays, and Dr. Whitaker knows this, I've said all along that public sector does give holidays. I've been very fortunate in my private career that I always had many holidays off, and the 2 to 4, that isn't a real number.
That's the information we did.
Right, I understand, and someone was given that information. I believe it came directly from the chamber. So the information was given, and when it was told to me, what I said was, well, maybe I've just been very fortunate, because I've always worked for fairly small firms that took care of employees. So I can appreciate that it is a horrible statement to say again, nothing against Walmart workers, but as you put it, the person working at Walmart gets more paid holidays than the people that are educating our children, and it's not something any of us are happy about. So that's really it.
Mrs. Miller?
Okay. Having been in the classroom, I understand where these teachers are coming from, and I appreciate what all of our employees do for our students. It is a difficult time, and of course with a difficult time comes difficult decisions. A budget advisory committee, I was glad to see that was formed, and it did represent all areas of the Charlotte County Public Schools. The most positive means of what they were looking for was the most positive means of retaining a high quality education for our students and the retention of the majority of our employees under these particular budgetary conditions that we have. And after a great deal of time and many meetings, the committee made recommendations that would meet both requirements. They also felt it was important to stress all decisions should be made with equity, fairness, and consistency. And those are the 3 particular sections that I paid close attention to and I feel are important between both sides, both our support people and our educators. And that's all I have to say right now.
Okay. Mr. Swift, did you want to say anything before I seek a motion of some sort?
Yes, I'll just, a couple of comments. Sitting here with those of you who have spent many years in the classroom, I have great empathy for what you went through as professional educators and what all professional educators go through each and every day. I know the number of non-contact days that my wife and daughter spend working on issues to make them better educators in the classroom, better facilitators for the learning of students. I agree with the statements made by those who've talked about equity. In this environment where we have expected more of people without being able to compensate them adequately because of the circumstances we're placed under, it seems a little disingenuous, if you will, to say to people, okay, we're going to take away 3 non-contact days, but we really expect you to work them anyway for no pay. Doesn't seem there's no real right word. Appropriate is the only one I can come up with, but that doesn't significantly convey the meaning that I want. But it doesn't seem to be the right way to approach the issue and just compound the problem of not being able to do what we need to do for our employees. And I too wish we were not here for this particular event, but unfortunately, we are.
Okay, so I take it by the comments that nobody has any further questions for Mr. Klinovic or Ms. Mellinson before we move forward.
No questions, but I did want to make one more comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank the BAC for their many, many hours of service to this district. They have performed a valuable service to us. They have spent hours digging into the details of our budget. They have brought in people. They have interviewed. They have gone out of their way to get information to help us board members and the superintendent to form a budget every year. So I appreciate them. I am grateful for their work. And I put a lot of weight on their recommendations. I like their standards by which they operated under, those fairness and equity and the other standards that they set. And I value their input, and I trust the process that they used. So I did want to thank them.
Thank you. That's really what I was getting ready to say. You know, this is not where this board expected to be when we brought in Dr. Gaylor several years ago and gave him the charge of establishing a collaborative relationship. This is not where we expected to be when we worked with CFEA 2 years ago, knowing these budget cuts were coming, and we established the BAC. I think part of my intention on supporting both of those actions was to prevent what is happening here today. So I join my colleagues in having regret that we are here. But we are here, and it is our job by statute when a resolution is unable to be reached that we then serve as the legislative body. It's a very uncomfortable position to be in because we want agreement with our employee groups. And I can't think of any school district in this state that has worked harder toward that end than we have. Nor can I think of any private employer who has worked harder toward that end than we have. And it hasn't just been from our side. It has been from the CFEA side as well. So all of us, I think, have to kind of feel some remorse for the position that we find ourselves in here. You know, we've invested over 8 years into developing and cultivating this collaborative relationship. But even so, we may not always agree, and that's really where we find ourselves here today. Again, sitting at this side of the impasse table is never a spot I thought I would be. I was a teacher for 8 years. I loved being a teacher. I respected all of my colleagues and all of the educators. I still do. And so having to impose something upon them puts me in a very uncomfortable and unwelcome position. No board ever wants to have to face an impasse. I don't think any union ever wants to have to face an impasse. But, you know, I am reminded as I sit here and contemplate the fairness and equity issue about 10 years ago, in my early years on the board, one of the first things that Mrs. Rendell and I faced when we first came on board was an issue of fairness and equity. And it was an issue that some of you may recall that had to do with administrators having insurance benefits that were not that were greater than insurance benefits that were offered to other classifications of employees. And one of the first things that we voted on was to say, no, that's not fair. All of our employees should have things equal, and just because somebody's in a different classification, they shouldn't get more or less than somebody in another classification. So I'm reminded of that action we took 10 years ago because I think there's a parallel here today in the fairness and equity issue. I agree that we are all asked to do more for less, but I also don't want us to forget that it's not just within the school system. You know, I have many, many friends who are in outside industry and business who have had to do things that, regretfully, they didn't even have any input into, but their pay was cut, their days were cut, they've had to do all sorts of things to try to just keep their businesses afloat, and they've had layoffs, to Mrs. Rendell's point, which we've been able to avoid. So it's not just the school district. However, this is the first time in many, many years this district has had to feel it like we're feeling it right now. So I do agree with you, Mr. Swift, that it seems more respectful to teachers as professionals to have unpaid holidays rather than non-student contact days. It seems to me to be more respectful of their being professionals. So I guess those are my general comments. At this point, unless there's further discussion, I'll accept some motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation for the cutbacks.
Second?
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to accept the superintendent's recommendation, which, for the record, was to have 3 unpaid holidays. Board discussion. Mr.
To have a reduction in.
I'm sorry.
Of 3.
Yes, thank you. To have the reduction in 3 paid holidays. That is correct. To reduce the paid holidays by 3 is actually the way I would like to word that. Yes. Mr. Klenwick?
It would be, if we have people who are working 232 days, they would need to have it reduced by more than 3.
Ms. Mellinson, can you clarify that? I do believe there was a scale based on the number of work days in the actual recommendations. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I do have that. Thank you, Mr. Klenwick. 180 to 216 days would be 3 days. 217 to 230 would be 4 days. 231 to 255 days. 251 plus would be 6 days. Thank you. And I appreciate you for making sure that that's on the record. Mr. Vincent?
Yeah, just to clarify, and I could be wrong, that is the number of paid holidays that the employees working in those classifications will receive. not how
Paid
much-
holidays shall be provided based on this formula,
So
correct?
If you are a 180-day employee,
You'll get
receive
3.
3 days. If you are a 251, you receive 6. It's not that you're being reduced 3 and 6.
That is correct, right? Yes, your interpretation is correct. Days of employment, paid holidays. If you have 180 to 216 days of employment, you will get 3 paid holidays. If you have 217 to 230 days of employment, you will get 4 paid holidays. It's on the ratification agreement.
Yes, second page.
The ratification information that went out to, it's the document that looks like this.
Well,
Oh,
and
okay.
the only reason I ask is, John, are there people who are losing more than 3 paid holidays?
Yes.
In this? Okay,
That's what I want to
Right,
make sure.
right.
I wanted to make sure that that's what you were saying.
Right. Okay. Further board discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation, which has the language that I just read into the record regarding days of employment and paid holidays. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Mr. Attorney?
We need to do this one as well.
Well, I think, yes, obligatorily, we need to
Clean that up.
do, let me find that up on my,
You don't mind?
this one. Nope, I got it. Item number 10 on the impasse stipulation, which actually was the piece that had to do with the experience credit. Both sides agree that no performance evaluation process to connect the employee competency to compensation has been completed, so it cannot be implemented. Mr. Klinovic addressed that. Ms. Mellinson addressed that. For the record, however, you would like to see the board address this in what way?
Just adopt the language that's indented, experience credit within the meaning, blah, 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 for the 211, 212 school year. Just impose that as well, just for housekeeping purposes.
Okay. So I will need a motion which would say that I move that experience credit within the meaning of the existing collective bargaining agreement shall not be awarded for the 2011-2012 school year as it is presented in that parenthetical documentation on item 10 of the impasse stipulation.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the experience credit shall not be awarded for the 2011-2012 school year. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Now, Mr. Superintendent, is there anything else that we need, or excuse me, Mr. Attorney, is there anything you've
Not that I'm aware of.
been hired
Thank
for a new
you.
job? Thank you. Is there any board member comment? Mr. Swift?
One quick thing I heard today, House Bill 1 for the next year is going to deal with requiring OPAGA to do a study to determine whether the constitutional requirement of an adequate education is being met by the legislature and what the amount of money it would take per student to guarantee that. I find that extremely interesting.
Interesting. Any other board comments? I would just like to say that I know the fact that we even had to have this hearing today may affect the working relationships. It's my hope that, like other stumbling blocks that we've had along the way, it can be short-lived and that we can build upon the trust that has been built over the last 8 years to continue to operate in a collaborative way that is committed to student success and to our employees. I think I speak for the whole board when I say we value greatly the relationship and the collaboration, the input that we hear from parts of the organization like the BAC is invaluable to us and to our ability to serve as good stewards and fiscal agents. So I do not want in any way the fact that we had to have this hearing today to reflect or suggest in any way that relationship is not of high importance or value to us. And I just want to be on record with that. Anything else?
Excellent job, Madam Chairman.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.